All right, the learner. So you're here because you want to get to the heart of things, right? No beating around the bush. You want the knowledge without the fluff. And today, we're diving deep into a question that I think we all grapple with. How do we really, truly make the most of this one precious life we've got?
That's a big one for sure. And our guide for this exploration is Bill Perkins and his book, Die with Zero. Now, I know the title might seem a bit jarring at first, but trust me, the idea behind it is really powerful. It's all about understanding that life is essentially the sum of our experiences and how we can use our time and money not just to exist, but to truly live, to create a life packed with fulfilling memories.
Absolutely. And in this deep dive, we're going to unpack the key ideas that Perkins lays out. We'll explore why those experiences matter so much. This concept of the memory dividend and this really intriguing idea of a net worth peak. Basically, we're on the hunt for those aha moments that make you rethink things and give you a fresh perspective on your own life and the choices you make. Okay, so let's jump right in. Let's start with a story that Perkins uses that really brings home the urgency of this whole idea. The story of Aaron and John.
This is a powerful example. Aaron and John were successful lawyers raising a young family. Seemingly they had it all, but then their lives were completely upended when John was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of cancer. Aaron recounts the rapid decline of his health and the incredible burden she suddenly faced.
Yeah, and what really resonated with me, the learner, was how clear Aaron became in that moment about what truly mattered. Here they were successful, presumably financially secure, and yet time had become the ultimate constraint. And Aaron's decision was immediate and decisive. She stepped away from her demanding career to fully dedicate herself to John and their children. It's a stark reminder that when we're confronted with our own mortality, experiences become infinitely more valuable than any amount of material wealth.
Absolutely. It underscores the inherent limitations we all face. While their situation was extreme, the underlying truth applies to every one of us. Our health generally declines over time, and our time here is finite. This naturally leads to the question of how we maximize our experience of life. How do we squeeze every drop of fulfillment from the time we have?
And what I love is that Perkins doesn't just dwell on these existential questions.
Yeah.
He approaches it like an engineer, like a problem to be solved. How do we actually optimize the limited time and money we have to achieve maximum fulfillment? And this leads him to a really interesting and perhaps unexpected conclusion. We need to prioritize experiences, often even above accumulating more wealth. And he makes a compelling case that these experiences offer something deeper and more lasting than just material possessions.
That's right. He argues that experiences have an inherent value that surpasses material goods, and he even points to psychological research that backs this up. Studies show that investing in experiences tends to lead to longer-lasting happiness and satisfaction compared to buying things.
And then he introduces this fascinating concept he calls the memory dividend. Can you explain that a bit more?
So, the learner, think of it like this. Experiences have a unique superpower, the memory dividend. It's like getting paid over and over again in joy every time you revisit a positive memory. That week-long vacation you took, it doesn't just end when you come home. It becomes a lifetime of happy recollections. Each time you think back on it, share a story, look at a photo, you're essentially getting another dose of that original positive feeling.
It's like that trip makes these little emotional deposits that you can keep withdrawing from over time. You have the initial joy of the experience itself, but then it continues to pay off in positive feelings and connection every time you dip into those memories. It's amazing, really.
Yeah.
An experience that just keeps on giving.
Exactly. And Perkins highlights that this memory dividend can actually grow stronger when you share those memories with others. It sparks new positive interactions and strengthens your relationships. What was once a personal joy becomes a shared and amplified positive experience. So this brings up a crucial question, the learner. How does this way of thinking challenge the traditional ways we've been taught to manage our money?
Well, one concept that really struck me was the honorary billionaire. Perkins talks about how even the ultra-wealthy often struggle to spend their fortunes within their lifetimes. He even points to examples like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, who, despite their massive philanthropic efforts, still face the challenge of effectively deploying their vast wealth.
It's about scale, Even with the best intentions of giving back, the accumulation of such enormous wealth can actually outpace the practical ability to use it in meaningful ways within a single lifespan. It really highlights the potential disconnect between our drive to accumulate wealth and our actual capacity to derive true meaning and impact from it.
And then he tells this story from his early career. He was diligently saving, being all responsible, and his boss, Joe Farrell, basically calls him out for being too frugal. at a point when his earning potential was just starting to take off.
Yeah, that's a pivotal moment in the book. Farrell's argument was that Perkins's future earnings were likely to far exceed his current savings. So why deny himself enjoyable experiences now when he had the potential to earn significantly more later to fund future goals? It challenges that classic advice of save early and often, suggesting that the timing of when we enjoy the fruits of our labor is just as important.
And this ties in beautifully with his reflection on the book Your Money or Your Life, which really changed his whole perspective on what money actually represents, right?
Right. Your Money or Your Life introduces this powerful idea that money isn't just some abstract number in your account. It's life energy, the finite hours of your life that you traded to earn it. So every dollar you spend is actually a transaction of your limited time on Earth. It really makes you stop and think even about small purchases, you know. When you frame it in terms of the life hours it costs you to earn that money, it can change your whole perspective.
It's like it adds this whole other layer to the cost-benefit analysis. It's not just about the dollar amount, but about the life energy price tag. Suddenly, that impulse buy of another gadget might not seem so appealing when you realize how many hours of your precious time it cost you to get it.
Yeah.
So building on this idea of the true value of our resources, Perkins then delves into the importance of investing in experiences early in life.
And this is where the story of his roommate, Jason Rufo, really illustrates the point. Jason decides to backpack across Europe, even though it meant going into some debt. And looking back, Perkins realizes that the enduring value of those experiences far outweighed any temporary financial strain.
Yeah, he admits that at the time he was skeptical, even a bit worried about Jason taking on that debt. But years later, he sees the profound impact that trip had on Jason. It made him, in Perkins' words, infinitely richer in terms of life experience, even though they had very similar incomes at the time. It really drives home the point that our lives are ultimately defined by the sum of our experiences and that we should be deliberate and intentional about choosing them.
It's about being proactive, moving beyond just going through the motions and consciously planning for experiences that will bring real lasting fulfillment. Because it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and prioritize immediate security over long-term enrichment. It takes a conscious effort to design a life that's truly fulfilling. And it's not just about these big adventurous trips either. Perkins also shares this really touching story about giving his father an iPad filled with cherished memories.
Oh yeah, that was a beautiful story. As his father's physical abilities declined, those digital memories became a lifeline, a source of joy and connection, almost like a second life he could revisit. It really highlighted how important those memories become as we age. It's like a retirement plan for our minds.
It really reinforces the idea of the memory dividend. Those experiences captured and relived can continue to offer value and comfort, even when our physical capacity for new adventures diminishes. And as we talked about earlier, sharing those memories with loved ones amplifies the effect even further. It deepens our bonds and creates new layers of positive connection.
And he even contrasts this focus on return on experience with a more traditional financial mindset. He uses the example of his friend Paulie, who was thinking about buying a vacation property, mostly as an investment.
The key point there was the shift in perspective. Perkins encouraged Paulie to think about the return on experience, the amount of joy, the time spent with family and friends, the lasting memories that property would facilitate. He argued that at their stage of life, investing in experiences that create rich life moments could be far more transformative than a modest percentage gain on an asset.
It really underscores the idea that the ultimate purpose of earning and managing our money is to enable those experiences that give our lives meaning. And those experiences, in turn, generate their own unique and lasting return through the memory dividend. This leads us to a really important point that challenges a lot of our ingrained financial habits: the potential pitfall of saving too much for too late.
Perkins presents some really eye-opening data here. He highlights statistics on median net worth by age and shows that many people continue to accumulate wealth well into their retirement years. The data suggests that instead of drawing down their savings, many retirees actually maintain or even increase their assets.
The numbers are pretty startling. For retirees with over $500,000 in assets before retirement, the median amount they spent down after 20 years, or by the time of their death, was surprisingly small compared to their initial wealth. That means a huge chunk of their savings remained untouched. It makes you wonder, what was all that saving for?
Right. People spend their working lives diligently saving for retirement, presumably to enjoy their later years and reap the rewards of their labor. But the data shows that many aren't actually using those savings to enhance their lives during retirement. So it begs the question, what is all that accumulated wealth ultimately for?
And then he shares this personal story about giving his grandmother a $10,000 check. only to realize later that a more meaningful experience, something like a trip to see family she hadn't seen in years, would probably have brought her far more lasting happiness and connection than the money itself.
It really highlights the potential for what he calls wasted life energy. And he illustrates this further with the hypothetical example of Elizabeth, who diligently saved throughout her career, but ended up passing away, leaving behind a substantial sum of money. When you calculate the sheer number of hours she worked to earn that unspent money, it represents years of working for free time that could have been invested in experiences that truly enriched her life.
And he also directly tackles that common fear of saving for potential medical emergencies later in life. He has a really interesting perspective on that.
He acknowledges that high healthcare costs are a real possibility, but argues that for many people, the most expensive end-of-life care might exceed their total savings anyway. He suggests that looking into options like long-term care insurance could be a more targeted and effective way to manage those specific financial risks, rather than just oversaving across the board and potentially ending up with a large unused estate.
So it's not about ignoring potential future needs, but about being strategic and realistic in our planning and considering alternative solutions. And this leads us to the really crucial idea of finding the right balance in how we live our lives now.
Based on advice he got from his boss and insights from economist Stephen Levitt Perkins, suggests that younger people with a longer runway of earning potential ahead have more flexibility to be generous with their spending and even consider modest borrowing for truly valuable experiences. Obviously, the caveat here is to be responsible and avoid high-interest debt, but the idea is that your future earning power can justify investing in life-enriching experiences now.
And he stresses that this ideal balance between spending and saving isn't static. It evolves throughout our lives. Rigid rules of thumb, like that 50-30-20 guideline, might not be optimal for everyone, especially during your early career when your income is likely to grow significantly, or later in life when your ability to fully enjoy certain experiences might be diminishing.
What's crucial is an awareness of our own mortality. The closer we get to our eventual passing, the more weight we should arguably give to enjoying the present and creating those fulfilling experiences. It's about aligning our financial decisions and life choices with the reality of our finite time on this earth.
And one factor that often gets overlooked in all this is the declining utility of money as we age, and our health inevitably changes.
This is a big one. The learner, our ability to fully enjoy many life experiences, is tied to our physical and mental well-being. Even if you have plenty of money, declining health can seriously limit your ability to participate in activities you once loved. Whether it's playing sports, traveling to exotic places, or even just moving around comfortably.
He gives these really relatable examples that I think resonate with everyone, like you can't play football with the same intensity at 50 as you could at 20. Or his friend who used to ski for a week straight but realized it was just too physically demanding now.
Yeah.
It reminds us that our bodies have limits, and those limits tend to become more noticeable as we get older.
And we often have this disconnect between how we see ourselves and our actual physical capabilities as we age. We might still picture ourselves as younger and more agile than we really are, which can lead us to underestimate how aging will affect our ability to enjoy life to the fullest. This reinforces the idea that spending the same amount of money on an experience at a younger, healthier age can yield far more joy and fulfillment than spending it later in life. That $100,000 might give you a much bigger experiential return in your 50s than it would in your 80s.
So to help us navigate all these factors and plan more effectively, Perkins introduces this concept of time buckets.
It's a practical tool for visualizing and planning out key life experiences across different stages of your life, maybe in 5 or 10-year intervals. The idea is to think proactively about the things that are truly important to you, the experiences you want to have, and then slot them into specific time frames based on when you're most likely to be able to fully enjoy them.
It forces you to acknowledge that some experiences have a limited window of opportunity. Like mountain climbing is probably best suited for your younger, more physically capable years, while other experiences like reading or spending quality time with loved ones might be enjoyable across a wider range of ages.
And when you map out those desired experiences across your lifespan, you often see a natural concentration in those earlier time buckets. It kind of looks like a bell curve skewed towards younger years. This visually reinforces the urgency of prioritizing certain experiences while you still have the health and vitality to embrace them fully. And Perkins uses his own 45th birthday celebration in St. Bart's as a great real-world example. He intentionally spent a significant amount of money to create a truly meaningful and memorable experience at a time when he was still young and healthy enough to enjoy it to the fullest.
That party sounded epic. And he specifically chose that time, in part because his mother was still healthy enough to travel and participate. It highlights the importance of considering not just our own circumstances, but also the well-being and availability of our loved ones when planning these significant life events.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing those optimal windows for creating shared and cherished memories. And this brings us to another key concept, understanding your net worth peak.
This is the idea that for most of us, our net worth tends to grow throughout our working years, but eventually it hits a high point, the peak. And Perkins argues that we should think of this peak not just as a dollar amount, but as a point in time that's closely linked to our biological age and health.
Exactly. The conventional financial wisdom often emphasizes continuous wealth accumulation, but Perkins challenges that by highlighting the diminishing returns of money as we age and the parallel decline in health and vitality. If we're solely focused on endlessly growing our net worth, we risk missing out on amazing experiences during our healthier, more capable years.
He suggests that for many people, this net worth peak probably happens somewhere between 45 and 60 years old, with some variation depending on individual health and circumstances. But the takeaway is to recognize that exceeding a certain savings threshold, the basic level of financial security you need to survive, might not actually make your life significantly more fulfilling.
It's about consciously deciding when to shift gears from accumulating wealth to thoughtfully spending it down. Using your savings to fund meaningful experiences while you still have the health and vitality to appreciate them. Because that fear of outliving our savings can sometimes lead us to oversave and end up with a big pile of unspent money representing all these missed opportunities for a richer life.
So it's about having the courage to go after the experiences that truly matter while still being financially responsible.
All right. Perkins encourages taking calculated risks, especially when you're younger and have less to lose. He uses the example of Mark Cuban's early entrepreneurial ventures to show how the potential upside of taking bold action can far outweigh the downside, especially when you have time to recover if things don't go as planned.
And this applies to career choices too. He suggests that going after your dreams and passions is often a better bet when you're younger, because you have more time to adapt and pivot if things don't work out the way you expected. He even shares his own story of leaving a safe and secure job to become a trader in Texas, emphasizing the importance of taking calculated leaps for the chance of greater fulfillment and to avoid those what-if regrets down the road.
The key takeaway here is to acknowledge the risk of inaction, the potential for missing out on incredibly fulfilling experiences by always playing it safe. It's understandable to crave security, but it's important to weigh that against the potential for a richer, more meaningful life that can come from embracing well-considered risks.
So to bring it all together, the core message we've explored today is about being much more deliberate with how we use our most valuable resources, our time and money. It's about shifting our focus to actively maximizing those positive life experiences that ultimately shape a life well lived. We've talked about the power of the memory dividend, the concept of a net worth peak, not just as a dollar amount, but as a point in time, the practical use of time buckets for planning, and the importance of embracing a certain level of boldness in pursuing our goals, especially in our younger years.
Ultimately, it's about prompting you, the learner, to really examine your own beliefs about life money and what truly makes for a fulfilling existence. Perkins wants you to think about what you truly value and then align your actions and decisions with those values instead of just blindly following societal norms or unquestioned financial habits.
So as you reflect on everything we've talked about today, the learner, I want you to ask yourself, what experiences might you be putting off either consciously or unconsciously? What's one small but bold step you could take in the near future to prioritize one of those experiences? And maybe most importantly, start exploring the idea of your own net worth peak, not as some abstract financial target, but as a significant moment in time in your life and how your current spending and saving habits align with that vision. It's about striving to live a life that's rich in meaningful experiences, not just a life that's rich in unspent money.